Today, we are talking about the power of our nervous system, how it can deeply impact our emotional well being, and how it doesn't need to be complicated or difficult. So, I'm thrilled to welcome Sarah Levy to the show today because she's going to talk to us all about how to access and understand our nervous system signals and simplify the process for everybody listening. So, welcome, Sarah.
Thank you so much for having me. So happy to be here.
Oh my goodness, so excited to connect. And we have a background in dance in common.
Sure
So, oh,
do.
yes. So, for all my dancers listening, you're going to want to tune in because already as a dancer, we have a connection to our bodies that are a little more heightened than the average person. So, I think when it comes to nervous system regulation, this is going to be a very interesting conversation. And for all of my audience, no matter where you are, dancer at heart, dancer in the kitchen, dancer at a party, wherever you're at in your dance journey. I think this is going to be good for you also to learn that connection for the body. So, Sarah, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. Hi. Thank you again for having me. I'm so happy to be here. I am a licensed therapist. I'm a somatic experiencing practitioner. I'm a registered yoga teacher. And as you mentioned, I have a background in dance. So, the common thread between these things for me is being really connected with the mind and the body, and particularly in spaces that offer sort of like healing and um, growth and sort of shifts and changes that we can do through the body. Yeah. And so I work primarily with high achieving sort of adults, oftentimes within that like millennial range, who are really on the edge of burnout and are really seeking ways to sort of navigate the various demands of their life, while also finding times to care for themselves, which can be a huge struggle. And so, what I love is getting to teach folks about our nervous system and getting to talk about how to not only prioritize the time for yourself, but also what to then do, how to listen to what it is that your body is wanting. How do I know that the thing I want to do to care for myself is actually the thing I'm really needing in this moment? And so I again love talking about the nervous system, and I'm excited for us to get into it more.
Yes, thank you. So, tell us maybe, let's back it up.
Mm,
Nervous System 101. How
yeah.
would you introduce someone to the nervous system? Someone who, yes, we know there is a nervous system, but what's it all about?
Totally. And I think there is so much that's out there now where people hear the words nervous system, but don't actually know, right, what it is. So when
Absolutely.
I'm talking about the nervous system, I'm specifically talking about our autonomic nervous system, which is all part of our vagus nerve. And so for those watching, I'm going to show you there's sort of like a point, and you can bring a hand or a finger just to the back of your neck, right where it connects to your head. Yep, right there. That is where the vagus nerve connects. And what's cool is that it travels down the back of the neck all the way to the front here and down the whole body, down through like your torso, and it spreads throughout the body. And the word vagus literally means to wander. So your nervous system is part of this vagus nerve that wanders throughout your body. And its job is to send signals to your brain about safety and danger. So it's supposed to tell you, right? Something is a threat, or this space is okay, or things are okay right now. And as a result of whatever those signals are, your body then goes into one of a few different states. And I will sort of add my caveat here that this is all rooted in Stephen Porges's work on polyvagal theory. So if this is starting to spark something for you and you want to like dive deeper, this is where I'm getting all this like this is where this is all rooted from. So depending on how your body responds, right? We either go into fight or flight, which is usually the state that many of us are very familiar with. We know what it feels like, right? When the alarm bells are going off, when there's a lot of activation in the body, right? Like your heart is racing, your chest might get tight. There's lots of other things physiologically that happen too. The organs start to sort of tense up. We might have the experience of like feeling like the hair is sort of standing up on the back of your hands or the back of your neck. sweating, all sorts of things, right? These are all things that the body does to get ourselves ready to either get out of here immediately or to get ready to like kick some ass, essentially, right? So there's all this stuff our body does there. And then if our body feels overwhelmed by that experience, we then go into the freeze response, which is really this like deeply survival oriented conservation space where the body's like, this is too much activation. I don't want to be here with all of this. This is way too much. I'm just going to like freeze and sort of dissociate, numbness, all of those things. When I talk about freeze with the folks I work with, it's usually this like low level of freeze that shows up that we think of as like a functional freeze, where we're still sort of moving throughout our days and doing the things we need to do, but we're not really feeling connected to anything, right? And there's a lot of things, and I include myself in this, that I find myself doing when I'm in that functional freeze, right? Sort of like doom scrolling, like mindlessly engaging in activities, having like no real sense of like, I want to eat something, but I have no idea what that could be, right? Feeling sort of like disconnected from the body. And then there's this whole other response that is sort of a newer one that we talk about, which is the ventral vagal response, which is the opposite of the freeze. So this is when your vagus nerve says, things are actually okay here. I'm feeling comfortable. I'm feeling good. And then we move into this space of connection. And it's a space of connection with ourselves, with others, with the world. It's this feeling of being like present and alert, but not on edge, right? You're like in flow. It's an experience I would imagine, again, for anybody who enjoys movement, or if you feel connected to a community of any sort, right? You can experience this collectively, this sense of just like being present and in relationship. And there's all these things physiologically that our body does in those moments too. We just often don't really pay attention to them. We're like, this feels good. That's fine. I don't know that there's anything happening in my body, right? But there's all these incredible sensations and feelings that show up. So that's my like primer on the nervous system and sort of how we can respond, how our bodies will respond to all these different ways of sort of experiencing our environment. Yeah.
Thank you. That's so clear. Thanks for breaking it down because I know there's definitely a lot that happens in the body when it comes to our nervous system. So to break it down in those kind of categories, I would assume that the last one you mentioned, the connected feeling, is where we want to be. It sounds lovely.
Yeah, it sounds
Yeah,
great, right?
it
And so
sounds
that
great.
is the like, that's the, this is so often what I hear from folks when I talk about it. They're like, well, I just want to live in that ventral vagal space. And I'm like, yeah, no,
Absolutely.
I totally, I get that. I get that impulse. What I like to share with folks is that yes, we want to be finding that ventral vagal energy. We want to find it. And the idea is we want flexibility in our nervous system. We want to be able to respond to that stressor if there is something that is a threat, right? We want to be able to protect our bodies if we're feeling completely overwhelmed, right? So we want to build in that flexibility. And for most people who are experiencing burnout or that functional freeze or just feeling sort of like exhausted and disconnected,
Mhm.
you're right. So much of it is like starting to find those moments, those spaces where we can feel connected again.
And that functional freeze, the way you described it, I for sure was living in it for a good few years. Like years, we're talking.
Yeah.
Because for those listening, if you've been following the podcast and my journey, I've been through burnout, and the burnout actually led me here. So for me, it was a blessing in disguise, but recognizing those symptoms that you mentioned, Sarah, of just feeling disconnected, lack of purpose, just moving through your day with no clear focus or direction. You just go through the motions. You kind of go on autopilot,
Yeah. And
right?
again, yes, absolutely. And I think that story is so, so common. And again,
Mhm.
there's functionality to it, right? There was a function to it. You were getting things done, you were doing the
Yeah.
things you needed to do. And for most people, right, we get to a point where someone asks us a question, right? Or they'll be like, some of the folks I work with will say things like, you know, my boss asked me where I want to go with my role in this career and I have no idea, right? Or somebody asks me like how I'm doing and I'm like, I don't know. I think okay, right? It's this sense of like sort of floating through life in a way
Mhm.
that often doesn't feel that meaningful. It doesn't feel good. Yeah.
Yeah. The lack of meaning, the lack of purpose that I feel, unfortunately, when we do get caught up in that cycle, we might not realize that it's a problem. We
Right.
might get used to, again, that autopilot because, like you said, it's functional, right? We're getting things done, we're moving through. It's not like we are crawling into a hole and disappearing. We're
Right.
still working through our day to day and we're still doing, quote unquote, what we need to be doing at work or whatnot.
Right.
And for me, the huge wake up call was, but I'm no longer happy. And this is a problem. Like, I don't want to be going through life on autopilot. So I feel like for everyone listening and watching, notice in your life where you are on autopilot. Have you just kind of let things go and not realized or asked yourselves the question of, is this still right for you? Is this still bringing you meaning and purpose? And I think with Sarah, what I want to explore together is that your body's going to let you know either way,
Yeah.
right? I think
Yeah.
that's the big
Right.
one. Your body tells you
Our
whether you want
bodies
to.
know. Yes, exactly. They always know. And our bodies will bring us back to those exact, like, that really like embodied sense of, oh, this feels right versus this is actually not feeling right anymore.
So, what are some things that the body can tell us? Like, what does that communication look like? And I'm sure it's different for everybody, but some common things, and I'll share after what I experienced too, but some
Yeah.
common ways that our body is speaking to us.
Yeah, so our bodies are talking to us all the time. It's just a matter, again, of like finding that space to be able to listen and to really tune in and allow the mind to sort of drop back, right? Because our minds have all these ideas. It's like, oh, well, I just did this thing and it was really great. So I'm sure it feels really good in my body, right? And the idea of,
Justify.
right, right. Like we can find it. I'll logic my way to my body. And
Yeah.
so really inviting the idea that like we don't have to know the answer all the time, that we can sort of slow down and start to tune in, and that there's specific places that I like to invite people to do this and ways to do this. One is that there's sort of different points in the body that we can start to check in with. I call them the vagus nerve hubs. So these are the places where there's just going to be more sensory activation usually. So one is, I like for folks who are, big overthinkers or who do a lot of rumination to start to check in with the mind. Like, how are your thoughts? Are they moving fast? Are they moving slow? Are they focused on one thing? Are they focused on a lot of things? Right. And usually, if I'm, noticing for myself or sitting with folks I work with, right, my mind is moving really quickly or it's darting from subject to subject, it is a sign to me that my body is in more of that fight or flight state. I'm like, oh, that's interesting.
Mhm.
Right. I might not have even realized I was there, but my brain like can't slow down right now. Right. So checking in with the mind, checking in with the feeling in your chest, in your throat, and you can start to notice, right? You can say, like, is it feeling tight? Is it feeling held? Or is there something that feels more open or airy, right? Like starting to ask some of these questions of, is it more here or is it more there? And what does that tell me about how I'm feeling right now? Right. So the chest, the throat,
The
the
throat is
stomach.
interesting. I've
Yeah.
never
The
thought of
throat's
that, but yeah.
The throat's a big one, right? If again, I have this background in yoga, so thinking too about the chakra system, right? That
Right.
there's this, like, there's so much that can happen here around there being a sense of tightness or something that's stuck, right?
Hmm.
And again, in terms of doing nervous system based work, we do this slowly and we force nothing, right? So we just notice, like, oh, it's feeling a little tight right now. Can I even just notice that that's there, right? And usually in that process, something starts to move, something starts to shift, which is really cool. So the throat, the chest, the stomach, or the gut, right? When we think about our gut feelings, like what is your stomach telling you? There's
Hmm.
so much that like our gut sort of can give us a sign on. It can, again, there's part of what happens when we move into that freeze response is that our digestive system slows down to a halt because the idea is that the body needs to conserve its energy. We can't have things processing through us right now. We're in this like dangerous situation and we don't know how long we'll be here for, right? So there's such There's such good reasons, right, why our bodies do the things they do, but it can give you this sense if your stomach is feeling really tight or there's a pit or a knot, right, that there's something there. And then the last one that I like to invite folks to check in with is their feet. So this one is perhaps a little bit unconventional and maybe not necessarily as nervous system aligned. But for me, the feet and thinking about feeling connected to the ground can
Mhm.
really offer us a sense of like settling in our bodies. So noticing how your feet feel, are they connected to something else? Do they feel light? Are they feeling steady? Like, what does that do for the rest of your body as you start to notice?
I love
Yeah.
that one. And I love unconventional thinking. So yay.
Thanks.
Yay. Yay. Okay,
Yeah.
so we have step one, which is the awareness, the checking in
Mhm.
of what your body is feeling, where are you feeling the tension, the tightness, where is it feeling off, where is it feeling good? So if you notice, let's say, okay, example, because I was fascinated by the throat. So my throat is feeling tense and closed up.
Mhm.
What is one thing I could do to start moving through those changes to help my nervous system get out of the freeze or whatever state it's in?
Right, whatever place it is, if you notice that there's a discomfort, right, like around
Mhm.
the throat or a tightness in the throat. So there's always many options, but one, right, is we can start to listen to like, is there an impulse? Is there something that I want to do right now? Is there something my body wants to do when I connect to this feeling in the throat? It might be something really sort of like more obvious, like, oh, I want a sip of water, right? Or it might be something to like tend to that area. You might also notice that the impulse is something else. It might be like, ooh, I want to move my body, or I'm noticing this desire to like curl up in a ball or something, right? There's sort of these are all different things that I both A have experienced and B have seen in others, right? That our bodies will tell us. And so just like asking the question, is there an impulse? Is there something my body wants to do right now? And then is it possible for me to just do that? Right? We have so much conditioning of how we're supposed to show up in different spaces, whether it's again, whether it's work or our families, or have been talking about this connection with dance too, how things are supposed to look, right?
Mhm.
Which is wonderful. And this is like a deeper knowledge of like, what is it my body wants to do here? So that's one thing, is asking the question of what is the impulse and can I do it? The other piece, and this is usually often what folks are asking, which is like, I want this feeling to go away. I want to be able to focus on something else right now. And this has become distracting.
Right.
So, the big thing that I invite folks to do is to practice orienting to the present moment. And the best way to do that, in my opinion, is through the five senses. So, anytime you can use your five senses, and you don't need to use all five of them, you can use one or two to help you come into the present moment, you will notice that any activation, so long as you're currently in a place that is generally safe, is generally comfortable, right? Your body will start to relax and ease. So, navigating sort of like, what is there one place my eyes can focus that feels good right now? I'm noticing this tension in my throat. Can I shift my attention to a place my eyes want to look? Maybe there's a painting in the space you're in, or maybe there's a beautiful tree out your window, right? Other things, right, are like sound, music, even sensing into like feeling connected to something that feels solid or grounded. This is another way to help your body just really feed off this energy of something that feels a little bit steadier, and then start to play with it. You can start to notice what happens to that feeling in my throat when I give myself the space to settle into my chair. What happens when I just listen to this piece of music and really just focus on the song? So, these are a couple different ways that I like to implement it. And there's one, if we want to do one together, that I like introducing to folks. And I've introduced it to different clients, but also in various workshops too that I like to do. Does that
Yeah,
sound okay? Yeah. Okay.
let's do it.
I
Yeah.
love it. Your
Okay.
game. So this one I call 3, 2, 1.
Mhm.
It's a simplified version of a longer practice, but I'm going to explain it and then you and I can do it together and we can talk about what we notice. So
Great.
we're going to look around your space that you're in, and we're going to
Mhm.
notice 3 things you see, 2 things you hear, and 1 thing you feel with your sense of touch. And as you do that, I want you to use a very simple descriptor of what that is. So, for example, I know in my space right now, and if you're watching, right, there's like an orange pillow behind me, right? So, like orange pillow or tall lamp, things like that. And we're going to go through this once and just see what we notice. Okay. So, as you're
Okay.
ready, let your eyes move away from the screen
Okay.
and just start to look around your space and naming three things that you see. And you don't have to say anything out loud. You can just say it right to yourself, but three things that you see.
And everyone listening and watching, you can do it too.
Yeah, join us.
Join us.
Two things that you hear, and one of them can be my voice. And then, as you're ready, one thing that you feel with your sense of touch. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything that stands out to you just as we do that.
The focused attention,
Yeah.
the willingness to just be in the moment and observe and
Right.
feeling. So I'll share what I feel. I have a very
Yeah.
comfy chair. So what I feel is the softness of the chair on my legs, which
Yeah.
I sit in this chair every day and I don't necessarily take notice of that feeling. But
Right.
once you bring that attention and you're asked to use your senses, it does bring a new experience that you never thought you can have, which is very interesting.
Right. Right. Exactly. And just like I mentioned in the beginning, right? Like our body is sensing into these things all the time. Perhaps there wasn't like a ton of conscious awareness, right, of your the softness of your chair in every moment. And your body is sensing into like this feels nice. This feels comfortable. This is my chair. This is where I feel like I get to sit and communicate and talk to folks, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Thank
Yeah.
you. I love that exercise.
So glad.
Yes. So you can all do that anytime at home, right? Or wherever you're
At
at. I'm sure
home,
even
in a
in traffic.
meeting, yeah, in traffic, anywhere. This is the joy of
Anywhere.
that practice is nobody knows you're doing it as you're doing it.
That's true.
Right.
That's true. I love that little exercise to help us connect to the moment.
Yeah.
And now, what I'd like to discuss with you, Sarah, is the connection to our emotions, because that's something that you talk about a lot as well. So I think, at this point, we're all aware of what our nervous system is, what it does, the use, and
Mhm.
obviously it's there to protect us. But when we're overthinkers, overanalyzers, when we're sometimes too intelligent for our own good, we try to override what our body is telling us. And
Right.
so by getting connected to yourself and really listening, that's how you can start to build that relationship with your body and work with your nervous system. But now, how does all of this impact your emotions or your well-being overall?
Yeah, great question. So, our emotions, right? There's certain emotions that show up for us when our nervous system is in different states, right? So, I mentioned that fight or flight state. There's usually certain emotions to me that indicate that I'm in a fight or flight state. Emotions like anxiety,
Mm.
anger, frustration, I mean, panic, right? There's the bigger ones too, fear. But these are like fight or flight response indicators to me is when I start to feel some of that like heat rising in my body and I notice that there's an anger. I'm like, oh, yeah, that's a fight or flight state I'm in right now, right? There's something that wants to move through me. We can start to sort of connect like which emotions are connected to which nervous system state when we're feeling that like numbness or disconnection or checked
Mm.
out, usually that's a place where we're not really feeling much. It's the place of feeling like, I don't know what I'm feeling right now. I don't know. I don't know. I feel like maybe I'm annoyed, but it feels like over in the distance and I don't even want to connect with it and I don't want to go there, right? There's like a disconnect from it. And then some of the emotions we start to notice when we're in that like ventral vagal connected space are like, I feel joy. I feel this lightness and this deep sense of feeling like I am understood and like in relationship. And I feel like a happiness, right? Like I feel this sense of like aliveness inside that feels really positive. So there's a lot of different ways that we can use our nervous system to also help us clue in to like what is the emotion that's here right now? What
Mhm.
is sort of the like category under which I might be feeling some of these things? Because again, as we start to notice our bodies responding in certain ways, it gives us this greater insight into, oh, I didn't even think I was angry about this, but I'm noticing there's like all of this, my hands are in these loose fists and I'm starting to feel this like overwhelming sense of like I want to yell or something, right? And so again, all of these responses are so normal and these emotions are so understandable that they would show up. And so a huge part of getting to know these emotions too is really bringing this sense of compassion and understanding that like our body is doing exactly what it knows how to do to keep us safe, to keep us alive, to keep us in relationship in the ways that it knows how to do it.
Using emotions as information.
Right.
Yes,
Exactly.
I love that. And not judging, not putting ourselves down. So I love that self-compassion piece because I think our emotions are there to be felt. All of our emotions are valid, but you don't need to hold on to them. And I think that's where we fall into the trap of we bring that emotion up into our mind, into our head, we overthink it, we overanalyze it, we try to rationalize it, and then we are feeling it for longer than we need to instead of just letting it go.
And that's exactly why I love connecting to the nervous system, right? It's because it allows us to ask those questions of like, what is the impulse? What does my body want to do with this right
Mhm.
now? Can I do it in a way that like feels relieving and releasing?
So, what I'm hearing is that we strive to have a regulated nervous system, but we are human. And it happens that our nervous system will be dysregulated because it's trying to protect us. But we need to make sure that are we actually safe? Is there a bear coming for us? And do we need to run? Do I need to
Exactly.
fight a bear or run away from it? What is that situation? If not, what else is going on? And asking the questions, feeling the feelings, allowing yourself to really connect to what your body is telling you so that you can get back to a regulated state.
You got it. That's it. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. And thank you
Yeah.
for that exercise to help us get to that feeling of, okay, what does it feel to be connected? What does it feel to really tune into my senses? I think that's a great first step of trying to get that connection back with your body and with yourself. And thank you for letting us understand the nervous system in such a simple way. Because
Yeah.
in the beginning, when I started learning about it, there was a lot of information. I was overwhelmed. It was intimidating. But thank you for everything that you do, Sarah, because you're making it accessible for us. And I know that's your mission as well, but you're
Yeah.
doing a great job.
Thank you. I again had so much fun getting to chat about this and getting to break this stuff down. It's not complicated, right? When we slow down with it, it's not complicated and it's overwhelming to look at. Yeah,
Yeah,
I get that.
yeah. But I think it's so important to understanding our overall well-being
Hmm.
that so many of our triggers, so many of our struggles, if we just look at anxiety as a whole, it's all rooted in the nervous system. In
Right.
my opinion, I know there's more layers than that, but like if we can get to understand the nervous system, that's a huge part of the puzzle of trying to work through that anxiety.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So tell us a bit more about how to work with you and how you
Yeah.
help your clients.
Absolutely. So I have a private therapy practice, but I also right now am launching a membership space called the Full Cup Collective, which is for those of you who are feeling burnt out, who really connected with that feeling of functional freeze, who are noticing these things showing up in your body and feeling lost as to what to do with them. It's going to be a space where we really practice slowing down and prioritizing time for you and tuning into the body. And I will be offering all different kinds of somatic tools to help sort of savor those moments that are feeling good and be able to move through the times where it feels like those emotions got to move through us. So, uh, come check it out. I'm super stoked to be able to offer this to folks.
Amazing. All the links are in the show notes so you can connect with Sarah. That's a great initiative. Thank you for creating that space. I think we can all benefit from it. And again, thank you for everything that you do and for being here today. What a wonderful conversation. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you so much for having me. This was awesome. It was great to connect.